Picture this. You're standing in a boardroom full of your colleagues, the people you've worked alongside for 7 years, and your new CEO, someone who's been on the job for exactly 3 weeks, points directly at you and declares to everyone present that you're dead weight and completely useless to this organization. The room goes silent. Every eye is on you. Your face burns with humiliation. But here's what that CEO didn't know, and what made his next few months absolutely unforgettable. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from, and if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. My name is Marcus Thompson, and for 7 years I was the Senior Account Manager at Pinnacle Marketing Solutions in downtown Chicago. When I started there, fresh out of Northwestern, the company was barely keeping its head above water. They had maybe 15 clients, most of them small local businesses paying a few $1,000s a month for basic digital marketing services. The previous account manager had just quit without notice, leaving behind a mess of disorganized files, unhappy clients, and no clear system for managing relationships. I remember my first day vividly. Rebecca Martinez, who was the CEO at the time, sat me down in her cramped office that smelled like burnt coffee and old carpet. She was honest about the situation, brutally honest. The company was hemorrhaging money, clients were threatening to leave, and they needed someone who could not just manage accounts, but actually build relationships and grow the business. She couldn't afford to pay me much, but she promised that if I could help turn things around, there would be opportunities for growth. Most people in my position would have run. The salary was below market rate, the office was in a building that had seen better days, and the client retention rate was hovering around 40%. But something about the challenge excited me. Maybe it was the optimism of youth, or maybe I genuinely saw potential where others saw problems. Either way, I decided to stay and see what I could build. Meals. The first thing I did was organize the chaos. I spent my first 2 weeks going through every single client file, making calls, sending emails, and figuring out exactly what services we were supposed to be providing and whether we were actually delivering them. What I found was worse than I expected. We had clients paying for social media management who hadn't received a single post in 3 months. We had others paying for SEO services who couldn't even access their own website analytics. Some clients didn't even have a designated point of contact at our company. I created a system. Every client got a detailed file with their contact information, service agreements, billing history, and communication log. I set up regular check-in calls, monthly progress reports, and quarterly strategy reviews. More importantly, I started treating each client like they were our only client. When Sarah Chen from Chen's Boutique Bakery called with a problem, I didn't just fix it. I followed up 3 times to make sure she was completely satisfied. When David Rodriguez from Rodriguez Auto Repair needed help with a last-minute promotional campaign, I stayed until midnight to get it done. The results started showing within the first 6 months. Client retention jumped from 40% to 75%. Existing clients began upgrading their service packages because they were finally seeing results. And most importantly, they started referring new business to us. Sarah Chen referred 2 other bakery owners. David Rodriguez brought in his brother-in-law who owned a construction company. Word was spreading that Pinnacle Marketing Solutions actually cared about their clients. By the end of my first year, we had grown from 15 clients to 38 clients. Revenue had doubled. Rebecca was ecstatic. She gave me a bonus and promoted me to Senior Account Manager. But more than the money or the title, I was proud of what we had built together. These weren't just accounts on a spreadsheet. They were real relationships with real people who trusted us with their businesses. Year 2 was when things really took off. I had established a reputation in the Chicago small business community as someone who got results. I wasn't just managing accounts anymore. I was actively seeking out new opportunities. I joined the Chicago Small Business Association, started attending networking events, and even began speaking at local business seminars about digital marketing strategies. The personal touch was everything. When Michael Foster's restaurant was struggling during a particularly slow winter, I didn't just create a marketing campaign. I brought my entire family there for dinner and encouraged all my friends to do the same. When Jennifer Walsh's real estate business was just getting started, I connected her with 3 other clients who were looking to buy or sell properties. I wasn't just their marketing consultant, I was their advocate, their connector, their problem solver. This approach paid off in ways I never could have imagined. Clients weren't just staying with us, they were becoming evangelists for our services. Jennifer Walsh alone referred 12 new clients to us in 1 year. Michael Foster's restaurant became so successful that he opened a second location and doubled his marketing spend with us. We were growing not through aggressive sales tactics or expensive advertising, but through genuine relationships and word-of-mouth referrals. By year 3, I had developed what I privately called my inner circle, a group of about 25 core clients who weren't just customers, but genuine business partners. These were the clients who called me directly when they had challenges, who invited me to their company events, who trusted me to make marketing decisions without approval. They represented the bulk of our revenue and the foundation of our growth. Rebecca recognized what I was accomplishing. She started involving me in strategic planning meetings, asking for my input on new service offerings, and giving me more autonomy to structure client relationships as I saw fit. I wasn't just following company protocols anymore. I was essentially writing them based on what worked with real clients in real situations. The growth continued year after year. By year 4, we had over 100 clients. By year 5, we had outgrown our original office space and moved to a sleek building in the Loop. By year 6, we were being recognized as one of Chicago's fastest-growing marketing agencies. And through it all, my original clients stayed with us, grew with us, and continued referring new business. But success brought new challenges. As we grew larger, it became harder to maintain the personal touch that had made us successful in the first place. We hired more account managers, more designers, more developers. The company was generating millions in revenue, but I worried we were losing the intimate client relationships that had built our reputation. I addressed this by creating what I called the VIP client program. These were our longest tenured, highest value clients who received direct access to me, regardless of what other account managers might be assigned to their accounts. I made it clear to the team that these clients were special. They had been with us since the early days. They had trusted us when we were nobody, and they deserved our absolute best service. The VIP program included monthly personal check-ins, quarterly strategy sessions with me directly, priority support, and exclusive access to new services before they were offered to other clients. More importantly, these clients had my personal cell phone number and email address. They knew they could reach me anytime, day or night, if they had an urgent need. This created an incredibly strong bond between these core clients and our company. They weren't just paying for marketing services. They were part of our extended business family. When we celebrated company milestones, they celebrated with us. When they achieved business successes, we celebrated with them. The relationships transcended typical vendor-client dynamics. Rebecca often commented that I had an almost supernatural ability to keep clients happy and engaged. What she didn't realize was that there was nothing supernatural about it. It was simply consistent effort, genuine care, and treating every client like their success was my personal responsibility. I tracked every client's business metrics, remembered their family members' names, sent birthday cards, and made sure they felt valued not just as revenue sources, but as people. The 7th year brought the biggest change yet. Rebecca announced that she was selling the company to a larger marketing conglomerate called Summit Strategic Group. She was ready to retire, and Summit had made an offer that would set her up comfortably for life. The sale would mean new ownership, new management, and inevitably, new ways of doing business. I was nervous about the acquisition, but Rebecca assured me that Summit valued what we had built and wanted to preserve the culture and client relationships that made us successful. She specifically mentioned that they were impressed by our client retention rates and the strength of our account management. I was told that my role would not only be secure, but that there might be opportunities for advancement within the larger organization. The transition period was relatively smooth. Summit's representatives visited our office several times, interviewed key employees, and reviewed our client portfolios. They seemed particularly interested in understanding how we had achieved such strong client loyalty in an industry known for high turnover. I spent hours explaining my relationship-building approach, walking them through specific client success stories, and detailing the systems I had developed for maintaining long-term partnerships. What I didn't know at the time was that Summit was conducting a comprehensive analysis of our client base to determine which relationships were truly valuable and which might be expendable. They were looking at revenue per client, profit margins, growth potential, and what they called strategic alignment with their broader service offerings. During one of these analysis sessions, I was asked to provide detailed information about each of my VIP clients, their contract terms, revenue history, decision-making processes, and key stakeholders. I provided this information willingly, thinking it would help Summit understand the value of these relationships and the importance of maintaining them properly. The sale was finalized on a Friday in early March. Rebecca hosted a farewell party at the office, thanking everyone for their years of service and expressing confidence that Summit would take good care of both the employees and the clients. She pulled me aside privately and told me that I was the heart of the company's client relationships, and that Summit understood this. She was confident that I would thrive under the new ownership. Monday morning brought our new reality. Summit had installed their own management team, led by a new CEO named Bradley Richardson. Richardson was in his early 40s, with an MBA from Wharton and a track record of acquiring and optimizing marketing agencies across the Midwest. He had a reputation as a turnaround specialist who could quickly identify inefficiencies and implement changes to improve profitability. The first few weeks under Richardson's leadership were relatively quiet. He spent most of his time in meetings with the other acquired managers, reviewing financial reports and developing what he called his optimization strategy. Those of us in client-facing roles were told to continue business as usual while the new leadership team assessed the situation. I maintained my regular client communications, continued my monthly VIP check-ins, and worked to reassure clients who had questions about the ownership change. Most of them were concerned about whether their service levels would be maintained and whether their existing relationships would be preserved. I assured them that nothing would change from their perspective. They would still work with the same people and receive the same level of service they had come to expect. But behind the scenes, things were changing rapidly. Richardson was implementing new reporting requirements, standardizing service offerings, and questioning many of the customized arrangements I had developed with long-term clients. He seemed particularly focused on what he called process efficiency and scalable systems. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. During my first one-on-one meeting with Richardson, he questioned many of my client management practices. Why was I spending so much time on personal relationships instead of focusing on upselling? Why were we providing customized services when standardized packages would be more profitable? Why was I giving clients direct access to me when they should be working through their assigned account managers? I tried to explain that the personal relationships were the foundation of our success, that the customized services were what differentiated us from competitors, and that the direct access was what made our VIP clients feel valued and loyal. Richardson listened politely, but I could tell he saw these practices as inefficiencies rather than assets. The tension between Richardson's efficiency-focused approach and my relationship-focused approach was becoming more apparent with each passing week. He wanted standardized processes, measurable metrics, and scalable systems. I wanted to preserve the personal touch, the customized solutions, and the intimate client relationships that had built our success. Everything came to a head on a Thursday morning in late April, during what Richardson had called an all-hands strategic planning meeting. The conference room fell silent after Richardson's declaration. 23 of my colleagues sat frozen, their eyes darting between me and the new CEO, who had just publicly humiliated me in front of the entire staff. The morning sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows seemed to mock the darkness that had just settled over the room. "Dead weight," he had said. "Completely useless to this organization." The words echoed in my mind as I felt every face in the room studying my reaction. Some looked shocked, others embarrassed. A few seemed almost relieved that they weren't in my position. I took a deep breath and stood up slowly. My hands weren't shaking. I was surprised by how calm I felt. 7 years of building relationships, of solving problems, of growing a business from nothing into something substantial, had taught me that knee-jerk reactions rarely solved anything important. "I understand your position, Mr. Richardson," I said quietly, I'd like to schedule a private meeting to discuss this further. I gathered my materials, nodded to my colleagues, and walked out of the conference room with as much dignity as I could manage. The whispers started before I even reached my office. I could hear hushed conversations erupting behind me, the kind of urgent, excited chatter that follows workplace drama. By the time I sat down at my desk, my phone was already buzzing with text messages from coworkers who had been in the meeting. "Are you okay?" came from Janet in accounting. "That was completely out of line," texted Mike from the creative team. "Can't believe he said that in front of everyone," wrote Lisa from project management. I appreciated the support, but I wasn't focused on the personal slight. My mind was already working through the implications of Richardson's statement and what it meant for the clients who depended on our services. If he truly believed I was useless, what did that mean for the relationships I had spent 7 years building? The answer came sooner than I expected. Within an hour of the meeting, Richardson's assistant called to inform me that he wanted to see me in his office immediately. I walked down the hallway that I had traversed thousands of times, past the walls decorated with client success stories and company milestone photos, many of which featured me with various clients at award ceremonies and appreciation events. Richardson's office had been completely transformed since Rebecca's departure. Where Rebecca had kept family photos, client appreciation letters, and small gifts from grateful customers, Richardson had installed a massive monitor displaying real-time financial metrics, efficiency charts, and performance dashboards. The warm, personal touches that had characterized our company culture had been replaced with cold corporate functionality. "Sit down, Marcus," Richardson said without looking up from his laptop. He continued typing for another 30 seconds before finally giving me his attention. "I want to be clear about something. This isn't personal, it's business. And from a business perspective, your approach to client management is outdated and inefficient." He pulled up a presentation on his screen and turned it toward me. The slides were filled with charts, graphs, and data points that painted a picture of our company's operations through purely financial metrics. Revenue per client, profit margins, time allocation, resource utilization, every aspect of our business had been reduced to numbers on a spreadsheet. "Look at this data," Richardson continued, pointing to a graph showing time allocation across different account managers. "You spend an average of 4 hours per month on each VIP client for what you call relationship maintenance. That's time that could be spent acquiring new accounts or upselling existing services. Our analysis shows that we could maintain the same client retention with half the time investment using standardized communication protocols." I studied the charts, recognizing the clinical efficiency of Richardson's approach, while understanding everything it missed. "Mr. Richardson," I began, "those numbers don't account for client referrals, contract renewals, or the long-term value of client loyalty. My VIP clients have an average lifetime value that's 3 times higher than our standard accounts." "Lifetime value is speculative," Richardson replied dismissively. "Current revenue is concrete, and your current approach doesn't scale. We're not running a boutique consulting firm anymore, Marcus. We're part of a larger organization with growth targets and efficiency requirements." He clicked to the next slide, which showed his proposed restructuring of the account management department. My VIP clients would be distributed among 4 different account managers, each responsible for maintaining standardized touchpoints and service levels. Personal phone calls would be replaced with automated email updates. Customized service packages would be consolidated into 3 standard offerings. "This is a mistake," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "These clients chose us specifically because of the personal relationships. They trust us because they know us. You can't just transfer that trust to someone else with a form letter." Richardson's expression hardened. "Marcus, you're proving my point exactly. You're so attached to your old way of doing things that you can't see the bigger picture. This company was acquired because of its financial performance, not because of your personal friendships with clients. Those relationships aren't assets. They're dependencies that make the business vulnerable." The irony of his statement was staggering, but I could see there was no point in arguing further. Richardson had made up his mind based on spreadsheets and efficiency models that didn't capture the human element of business relationships. He saw my approach as outdated sentimentality rather than strategic relationship building. "When does this restructuring take effect?" I asked. "We're implementing it next week," Richardson replied. "Your VIP clients will be transitioned to their new account managers over the next 2 weeks. You'll be reassigned to new business development, where your relationship skills might be more appropriately utilized. New business development. The corporate equivalent of being sent to Siberia. Instead of managing the accounts I had cultivated for years, I would be cold calling prospects and attending networking events to generate leads for other people to manage." It was a demotion disguised as a lateral move. I left Richardson's office with a clear understanding of my situation. The company I had helped build, the culture I had helped create, and the relationships I had spent 7 years nurturing were being systematically dismantled in the name of efficiency and scalability. The personal touch that had differentiated us from larger competitors was being sacrificed for the standardized approach that made us just another vendor in a crowded marketplace. The next few days were surreal. I watched colleagues I had worked with for years begin to distance themselves from me, unsure whether my apparent fall from grace might be contagious. The account managers who would be taking over my VIP clients started scheduling meetings to discuss transition plans, treating my carefully cultivated relationships as simple data transfers. The most difficult part was beginning to contact my VIP clients to inform them of the changes. These weren't just business contacts, they were people I had worked with through challenges, celebrated successes with, and built genuine trust with over years of consistent service. My first call was to Jennifer Walsh, the real estate agent who had been one of my earliest clients and had referred to more new business than anyone else. I had watched her grow from a struggling newcomer to one of Chicago's most successful residential real estate agents, and our professional relationship had evolved into genuine friendship. "Marcus, I've been wondering when you'd call," Jennifer said when she answered the phone. "I've been hearing some concerning rumors about changes at your company." I explained the situation as diplomatically as possible, emphasizing that the quality of service would remain high even though she would be working with a new account manager. Jennifer listened quietly, asking a few clarifying questions about timeline and process. "Marcus," she said finally, "I need to be honest with you. I didn't choose your company because of your logo or your service packages. I chose you because I trusted you. You've been more than a marketing consultant. You've been a business partner and friend. If you're not going to be managing my account anymore, I need to seriously reconsider whether this partnership still makes sense." The conversation with Michael Foster, the restaurant owner, was even more direct. "So let me understand this," he said. "After 7 years of working together, after you personally helped me through the worst period of my business, after you've been there for every major decision I've made, they're just going to assign me to someone new?" "The new account manager is very capable," I assured him. "Sarah Jenkins has been with the company for 3 years and has excellent experience with restaurant marketing." "I'm sure she's capable," Michael replied. "But I don't know her, I don't trust her, and I don't have 7 years of history with her. Marcus, you're not just my marketing guy. You're the guy, the first call when I'm thinking about expanding, when I'm worried about cash flow, when I need advice about anything related to my business. You think I can just transfer that relationship to someone I've never met?" The pattern continued with every VIP client I contacted. David Rodriguez, the auto repair shop owner, was blunt. "They're making a huge mistake, Marcus. You're the reason I've stayed with your company all these years. Without you, they're just another marketing agency." Sarah Chen, the bakery owner, was more diplomatic but equally clear. "I understand business changes, Marcus, but I hope you understand that my loyalty was to you, not to your company. I'll give the new arrangement a chance, but I can't promise anything long-term." By the end of the week, I had spoken with all 27 of my VIP clients. Their responses ranged from concerned to frustrated to angry. But the message was consistent. Their relationship was with me, not with Pinnacle Marketing Solutions. They had chosen our company because of the personal service and attention I provided, and they weren't confident that this value would continue under the new arrangement. Meanwhile, Richardson was implementing his efficiency improvements throughout the company. Standardized email templates replaced personalized communications. Automated reporting systems replaced custom analytics. Quarterly business reviews were condensed into 30-minute calls with standardized agendas. The account managers who inherited my VIP clients were good people doing their best in a difficult situation, but they were operating under Richardson's new protocols. They didn't have the deep knowledge of each client's business history, personal preferences, or strategic goals that I had developed over years of relationship building. More importantly, they didn't have the authority to make the kinds of customized decisions that had made our service valuable to these clients. Within 2 weeks of the transition, the problems began. Jennifer Walsh called to complain that her new account manager had recommended a marketing strategy that Jennifer had specifically rejected 2 years earlier. Michael Foster was frustrated that his new contact didn't understand the seasonal patterns of his business and was pushing promotional campaigns at the wrong times. David Rodriguez received a standardized service proposal that included marketing tactics he had explicitly said he didn't want. These weren't major disasters, but they were death by 1,000 cuts. Each miscommunication, each failure to understand client preferences, each generic response to a specific question eroded the trust and confidence that had taken years to build. I was watching 7 years of relationship building crumble in real time, and there was nothing I could do about it. My new role in business development kept me busy with prospect meetings and networking events, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was witnessing the systematic destruction of everything I had worked to create. The final straw came 3 weeks after the transition, during a company-wide meeting where Richardson was presenting the quarterly results. He was pleased with the efficiency improvements, noting that account management costs had decreased by 30% while maintaining the same number of client touchpoints through automation and standardization. "This is exactly the kind of optimization that drives sustainable growth," Richardson announced to the assembled staff. "We've eliminated redundant processes, standardized service delivery, and created scalable systems that will support our expansion goals." But buried in his presentation was a concerning trend. Client satisfaction scores had dropped from an average of 9.2 to 7.8 over the past month. Richardson dismissed this as a temporary adjustment period, explaining that clients would adapt to the new processes and that satisfaction scores would recover as the new systems became established. I knew better. A drop from 9.2 to 7.8 wasn't a temporary adjustment. It was a warning sign that the foundation of our client relationships was beginning to crack. The personalized service that had differentiated us from competitors was being replaced with the same standardized approach that our clients could get from any marketing agency in the city. That evening, I received a text message from Jennifer Walsh. "Marcus, can we meet for coffee tomorrow? I need to discuss something important with you." I met Jennifer Walsh at a small cafe in Lincoln Park, far enough from the office that we wouldn't run into any colleagues. She was already seated when I arrived, 2 cups of coffee waiting on the table. Her expression was serious, more business-focused than I'd seen in our recent conversations. "Marcus, I'm going to be direct," she began without pleasantries. "I'm leaving Pinnacle. My contract has a 30-day termination clause, and I'm exercising it." The words hit me like a physical blow, even though I had been expecting something like this. Jennifer represented over $40,000 in annual revenue, but more than that, she had been instrumental in referring new clients to us over the years. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, meaning it. "Is there anything that could change your mind?" Jennifer shook her head. "It's not about the new account manager. Sarah seems nice enough. It's about what this change represents. For 7 years, I've paid premium rates for premium service. The personal attention, the customized strategies, the fact that I could call you directly when I had an urgent need, that was worth paying extra for." She pulled out her phone and showed me an email chain. "Look at this." I asked Sarah a question about adjusting our Q2 strategy based on some market changes I'm seeing in my territory. This was her response. I read the email. It was professional, polite, and completely generic. Sarah had directed Jennifer to review the quarterly planning materials and schedule a formal strategy session if she wanted to discuss modifications to their existing plan. The response wasn't wrong, but it was exactly the kind of bureaucratic process that clients had come to us to avoid. "Under the old system," Jennifer continued, "I would have called you, explained the situation in 5 minutes, and gotten actionable advice immediately. Now I have to wait for a scheduled meeting to discuss what should be a simple adjustment. That's not what I'm paying for." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a more confidential tone. "Marcus, I'm not the only one feeling this way. I've talked to David Rodriguez and Michael Foster. We've all noticed the same changes. The personal touch is gone. We're being treated like account numbers instead of business partners. This confirmed what I had been fearing. The client satisfaction scores Richardson had dismissed weren't just temporary adjustment issues. They represented a fundamental breakdown in the value proposition that had made our company successful. "There's something else," Jennifer said. "The three of us have been talking and we want to know, are you planning to stay at Pinnacle under these new conditions?" The question caught me off guard. In all my conversations with departing clients, none had asked about my personal plans. I had been so focused on managing the transition that I hadn't seriously considered my own future. "I'm not sure," I answered honestly. "This isn't the company I joined 7 years ago, and it's definitely not the company I helped build. But I have responsibilities, a mortgage, commitments." Jennifer nodded understandingly. "I get that. But I want you to know something. If you ever decide to leave and start your own consulting practice, you have clients ready to follow you. Not just me. I've talked to others. We didn't choose Pinnacle Marketing Solutions because of their brand or their office space. We chose them because of you." After Jennifer left, I sat in the cafe for another hour, processing the implications of our conversation. I had always known that my relationships with clients were strong, but I had underestimated how dependent their loyalty was on personal connection rather than corporate affiliation. The next few days brought a cascade of similar conversations. Michael Foster called to inform me that he was also terminating his contract. "Nothing personal against your company," he explained, "but the service I'm getting now isn't worth what I'm paying. I can get the same level of generic marketing support from a dozen other agencies for half the price." David Rodriguez was more blunt. "Marcus, they've turned your company into just another corporate marketing mill. The whole reason I stayed with you guys for so long was because you treated my business like it mattered. Now I'm just another line item on someone's spreadsheet." By the end of the week, 5 of my former VIP clients had given notice that they were terminating their contracts. These weren't small accounts. Together, they represented over $200,000 in annual revenue. More importantly, they were the clients most likely to refer new business and most willing to upgrade their service packages. The financial impact was immediate and severe. Richardson called an emergency management meeting to address what he termed an unexpected spike in client churn. He was clearly frustrated, though he seemed to view the departures as a mystery rather than a predictable consequence of his policy changes. "We need to understand what's driving these cancellations," Richardson announced to the management team. "I want detailed exit interviews with every departing client. We need to identify the root causes and develop retention strategies." I wasn't invited to this meeting, but Janet from accounting filled me in on the discussion afterward. The exit interviews had revealed a consistent pattern. Clients were leaving because they felt the service had become impersonal and bureaucratic. They missed the direct access to experienced account managers and the customized attention that had justified their premium pricing. Richardson's response was to blame the account managers for failing to properly execute the new standardized processes. He scheduled additional training sessions on client communication and implemented new performance metrics focused on client satisfaction scores. What he still didn't understand was that the problem wasn't execution, it was strategy. The clients weren't leaving because the new account managers were doing their jobs poorly. They were leaving because the job itself had been redefined in a way that eliminated the value they had been paying for. Meanwhile, my new role in business development was becoming increasingly surreal. I was spending my days cold calling prospects and attending networking events, trying to generate new leads to replace the clients who were leaving because of the very changes that had relegated me to this position. The networking events were particularly awkward. I kept running into people who knew me as the account manager for various Pinnacle clients. When they asked how things were going, I had to navigate the delicate balance of maintaining professional loyalty while being honest about the changes happening at the company. At a Chicago Business Association luncheon, I encountered Tom Sullivan, who owned a chain of fitness centers. He had been considering hiring us for his marketing needs and had specifically requested to work with me based on recommendations from Michael Foster. "I heard Michael decided not to renew with your company," Tom said during our conversation. "He spoke very highly of your work together. What happened there?" I gave him the diplomatic explanation about organizational changes and new service models, but Tom wasn't buying it. "Look, Marcus," Michael told me the whole story. He said they basically pushed you aside and replaced the personal service with some kind of corporate cookie-cutter approach. Is that accurate? I couldn't lie to a potential client, even if it meant acknowledging problems with my own company. There have been some changes in how we structure client relationships, I admitted. The company is moving toward more standardized processes as part of a larger growth strategy. Tom nodded knowingly. So the answer is yes. That's too bad. Michael made it sound like you had built something special there. I was excited about the possibility of working with someone who really understood small business challenges. The conversation ended with Tom politely declining to move forward with Pinnacle, citing concerns about fit with our new service model. I had just lost a potential six-figure client because of the reputation damage caused by Richardson's changes. This pattern repeated itself throughout the following weeks. Prospects who had been referred by departing clients were no longer interested in our services. The word-of-mouth marketing that had been our most effective lead generation tool was now working against us. 3 weeks after Jennifer's departure, I received an unexpected phone call from Rebecca Martinez, the former CEO, who had sold the company to Summit Strategic Group. We hadn't spoken since her farewell party, and her voice carried a note of concern that immediately put me on alert. "Marcus, I've been hearing some troubling things from former clients," she began. "Jennifer Walsh called me yesterday to let me know she had terminated her contract. She said several others had done the same. What's happening over there?" I found myself in an impossible position. Rebecca had been my mentor and advocate, but she was no longer part of the company. I owed loyalty to my current employer, but I also felt obligated to give her an honest assessment of the situation. "There have been some significant changes in how we manage client relationships," I said carefully. "The new leadership has different priorities and approaches than what we used under your management." Rebecca pressed for details, and I found myself explaining the restructuring, the elimination of the VIP program, and the shift towards standardized processes. I tried to remain objective, but my frustration was probably evident in my tone. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," Rebecca said when I finished. "When Summit approached me about the acquisition, they said they wanted to preserve what made us successful while adding their resources and expertise. It sounds like they've done the opposite." She paused for a moment before continuing. "Marcus, I feel partially responsible for this situation. I knew there were risks in selling to a larger corporation, but I believed their assurances about maintaining our culture and client relationships. I'm sorry you're dealing with the consequences of my decision." Her apology caught me off guard. I had never blamed Rebecca for the sale. She had built the company from nothing and deserved to benefit from its success. But her acknowledgement of the unintended consequences helped validate my own feelings about the changes. "There's something else I want you to know," Rebecca continued. "When I negotiated the sale agreement, I included provisions that protect key employees from retaliation if the new ownership fails to maintain the company's performance standards. You were specifically mentioned in those provisions." This was news to me. I had never seen the acquisition documents and had no idea that my position had been specifically protected in the sale agreement. "What does that mean, practically speaking?" I asked. "It means that if Summit fails to maintain certain performance benchmarks, including client retention rates, key employees have the right to terminate their employment with full severance packages and non-compete waivers," Rebecca explained. "I included these provisions specifically because I was concerned about situations like what you're describing." The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Rebecca asking detailed questions about client departures, revenue impacts, and employee morale. By the end of the call, I had a much clearer picture of my legal position and my options for the future. That evening, I sat down with my wife Elena to discuss our situation. Elena had been watching the changes at my company with growing concern, particularly as she saw how the stress was affecting me. "You're not the same person who comes home from work anymore," she said gently. "For 7 years you've loved what you do. You'd come home excited about client successes, proud of problems you'd solved, energized by the relationships you were building. Now you come home frustrated and exhausted." She was right. The work that had once energized me had become a source of daily stress. I was spending my time trying to repair damage caused by policies I disagreed with, while being prevented from using the relationship-building skills that had made me successful. What would you think if I considered leaving? I asked. Elena didn't hesitate. I think you should have left weeks ago. The only question is whether you're going to find another job or start your own consulting practice. The idea of starting my own business had been forming in the back of my mind since my conversation with Jennifer, but I hadn't seriously considered it as a viable option. I had a mortgage, 2 car payments, and the financial responsibilities that come with 7 years of steady employment. But as Elena and I discussed the possibilities, the path forward began to seem more realistic. I had deep relationships with former clients who had already expressed interest in working with me independently. I had 7 years of experience in every aspect of marketing consulting, and thanks to Rebecca's foresight, I potentially had legal protection from non-compete restrictions. The next morning, I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of going directly to the office, I drove to a quiet coffee shop in Evanston and made 3 phone calls. The first was Jennifer Walsh. Jennifer, this is Marcus. I wanted to follow up on our conversation from last week. You mentioned that if I ever started my own consulting practice, I might have clients ready to follow me. Were you serious about that? Completely serious, Jennifer replied immediately. Marcus, I've been hoping you'd make this call. I've already talked to David and Michael, and we've all agreed that we'd rather work with you independently than stay with Pinnacle under the new management. The second call was to Michael Foster. His response was even more enthusiastic. Marcus, this is the best news I've heard in weeks. When can we get started? I've got 3 other restaurant owners who have been asking me about marketing consultants, and I've been waiting to have someone I could recommend. The third call was to David Rodriguez. It's about time, was his immediate reaction. I was starting to think you were going to stay there and let them waste your talents forever. What do you need from me to get this started? By noon, I had tentative commitments from 3 former clients, representing over $120,000 in annual revenue. It wasn't enough to replace my current salary immediately, but it was enough to make independent consulting a viable option. That afternoon, I called Rebecca to discuss the legal protections she had mentioned. She connected me with the attorney who had negotiated the acquisition agreement, and we scheduled a meeting for the following day to review my options and obligations. Everything was falling into place, but I still had one more conversation to have, the one that would determine whether I was making the right decision or the biggest mistake of my professional life. The attorney's office overlooked Grant Park, and the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the conference table where we sat reviewing the acquisition documents. Patricia Hoffman had been Rebecca's corporate attorney for 15 years, and her reputation for thorough contract negotiations was legendary in Chicago's small business community. Rebecca was exceptionally thorough in protecting key employees, Patricia explained, pointing to specific clauses in the acquisition agreement. These provisions were unusual for a transaction of this size, but she insisted on them after seeing how other acquisitions had destroyed valuable employee relationships. She highlighted a section titled, Key Employee Protection Provisions. The language was dense legal terminology, but the implications were clear. If Summit Strategic Group failed to maintain certain performance benchmarks within the first 18 months of the acquisition, designated key employees could terminate their employment without penalty and without being bound by non-compete agreements. The benchmarks include client retention rates, employee satisfaction scores, and revenue maintenance, Patricia continued. Based on what you've described about recent client departures, it appears Summit may already be in violation of these provisions. I studied the numbers she showed me. The agreement required maintaining a minimum client retention rate of 85% during the transition period. With the recent departures, our retention rate had dropped to 78%. The revenue maintenance clause required keeping annual revenue within 10% of pre-acquisition levels. We were approaching that threshold as well. What exactly does this mean for me? I asked. It means you have options, Patricia replied. You can invoke these provisions to terminate your employment with full severance pay and complete freedom to compete. Given your role in client relationships, Rebecca specifically ensured that you would have the maximum protection available. She handed me a folder containing detailed calculations of my severance package. The amount was substantial, equivalent to 8 months of salary plus accrued benefits. Combined with the client commitments I had already secured, it would provide enough financial cushion to launch my own consulting practice properly. But there was one more element Patricia hadn't mentioned yet. Rebecca also included a provision that allows you to purchase certain client contracts from Summit if they choose to terminate them due to performance issues. Essentially, if they decide to drop clients who are causing problems, you have the right of first refusal to acquire those relationships. This was extraordinary. Rebecca had anticipated that a corporate acquirer might view certain client relationships as more trouble than they were worth, especially smaller accounts that required high levels of personal attention. By giving me the option to purchase these contracts, she had created a pathway for maintaining relationships even if Summit decided to abandon them. I left Patricia's office with a clear understanding of my legal position and a detailed plan for invoking the protection provisions if I decided to leave. The financial risk of starting my own business had been substantially reduced, and the legal obstacles had been eliminated. The only remaining question was whether I had the courage to actually do it. That evening, Elena and I spread the documents across our kitchen table and worked through the numbers together. Elena had an MBA in finance and a natural talent for seeing both opportunities and risks in business decisions. "The financial case is actually quite strong," she said after reviewing Patricia's analysis. "Between the severance package and the client commitments you already have, you'd be starting with more security than most people who launch their own businesses." She pulled out her laptop and created a simple spreadsheet modeling different scenarios for the first year of operations. Even with conservative estimates for client growth and retention, the projections showed that I could match my current income within 6 months and potentially exceed it within a year. "But there's more to consider than just the financial aspects," Elena continued. "You've been miserable at work for 2 months. You come home every day frustrated about decisions you disagree with and problems you can't solve. That's not sustainable long-term, regardless of the money." She was right. The stress of watching years of relationship-building work being systematically dismantled had taken a toll that went beyond professional disappointment. I was sleeping poorly, losing interest in activities I normally enjoyed, and becoming increasingly cynical about the business world in general. "There's one more thing to consider," Elena said. "If you don't take this opportunity now, you might not get another chance. Your relationships with these clients are strongest right now, while the problems at Pinnacle are fresh in their minds. If you wait 6 months or a year, they might have already found other solutions or gotten used to working with different providers." The next morning, I made a decision that felt both terrifying and inevitable. I called Patricia Hoffman and asked her to begin the process of invoking the key employee protection provisions. She would need several days to document Summit's violations of the performance benchmarks and prepare the formal termination notice. While Patricia handled the legal paperwork, I began planning the practical aspects of launching my own consulting practice. I researched business licenses, insurance requirements, and tax implications. I drafted service agreements and pricing structures based on what I had learned about client needs over the past 7 years. Most importantly, I started having more detailed conversations with former clients about what they would want from an independent consulting relationship. These discussions revealed opportunities I hadn't previously considered. Sarah Chen, the bakery owner, was interested in expanding into catering and needed help developing marketing strategies for a completely different customer base. Under Pinnacle's standardized approach, this would have been handled through their business expansion service package, which included predetermined strategies that might or might not fit her specific situation. As an independent consultant, I could develop a completely customized approach based on her unique market position, target customers, and growth timeline. More importantly, I could work closely with her throughout the implementation process, adjusting strategies based on real-time results rather than waiting for quarterly review meetings. David Rodriguez had similar needs. His auto repair business was thriving, but he was concerned about increased competition from national chains and online service providers. He wanted to develop a marketing strategy that emphasized the personal relationships and local community connections that differentiated his business from larger competitors. This type of positioning strategy required deep understanding of his customer base, competitive landscape, and community dynamics, exactly the kind of customized analysis that had been eliminated under Richardson's standardized processes. Michael Foster presented the most interesting opportunity. His restaurant's success had attracted the attention of several investors who were interested in helping him open additional locations. He needed sophisticated financial marketing support to present his business to potential partners, along with ongoing consultation about maintaining brand consistency across multiple locations. This was advanced strategic consulting that went far beyond the basic marketing services Pinnacle typically provided. As an independent consultant, I could partner with other specialists to provide comprehensive business development support, creating much more value for Michael while generating higher fees for myself. During these conversations, I began to understand something important about the consulting business that I had never fully appreciated while working for Pinnacle. The most successful client relationships weren't based on providing predetermined services, but on solving evolving problems and capitalizing on emerging opportunities. At Pinnacle, we had been focused on delivering consistent, predictable services that could be easily managed and measured. But clients' real needs were dynamic and unpredictable. They needed advisors who could adapt quickly to changing circumstances and provide creative solutions to unique challenges. By the end of the week, I had detailed proposals prepared for 7 potential clients, representing over $200,000 in annual revenue. 3 of them were former Pinnacle clients who had already terminated their contracts. 4 were new prospects who had been referred by my former clients specifically because they wanted the type of personalized service that large agencies couldn't provide. The most surprising conversation was with Tom Sullivan, the fitness center owner I had met at the networking event. He called me directly after hearing from Michael Foster that I was starting my own practice. "Marcus, I want to be your first new client," Tom said without preamble. "Michael told me about your situation at Pinnacle and said you were going out on your own. I've been holding off on hiring a marketing consultant specifically because I was hoping this would happen." Tom's fitness centers represented a significant opportunity. He had 3 locations currently and was planning to open 2 more within the next 18 months. His marketing needs were complex, involving everything from local community outreach to digital advertising to corporate partnership development. "I need someone who can grow with my business," Tom explained. "I don't want to work with an agency that's going to assign me to different account managers every year or try to force my business into their standard service packages. I want a real partnership with someone who understands my industry and my growth goals." This conversation crystallized something I had been thinking about since beginning the planning process. The opportunity wasn't just to replicate what I had been doing at Pinnacle, it was to create something better. Independent consulting would allow me to focus exclusively on high-value clients who needed strategic guidance rather than basic service delivery. I could work with a smaller number of clients, charge premium rates for premium service, and build the kind of deep business relationships that created lasting value for everyone involved. Instead of managing accounts, I would be developing partnerships. On Friday afternoon, Patricia called to inform me that the legal documentation was complete. Summit Strategic Group was officially in violation of multiple performance benchmarks specified in the acquisition agreement. I could invoke the key employee protection provisions at any time and terminate my employment with full legal protection. "There's one more thing you should know," Patricia added. "I've been monitoring Summit's other acquisitions, and they're having similar problems at their other properties. Their standardization approach is causing client defections across multiple markets. This isn't an isolated issue, it's a systematic problem with their business model." This information was both reassuring and concerning. It validated my assessment that Richardson's approach was fundamentally flawed, but it also suggested that Summit might become more aggressive about protecting their remaining client relationships if they realized how serious the problem was. That evening, Elena and I had our final planning conversation. We reviewed the financial projections one more time, discussed contingency plans for various scenarios, and talked through the personal implications of becoming entrepreneurs rather than employees. "Are you ready for this?" Elena asked. I thought about the question seriously. Starting my own business meant giving up the security of a steady paycheck, the comfort of established systems, and the safety net of corporate resources. It meant taking responsibility for every aspect of business operations, from client acquisition to tax compliance to technology management. But it also meant having the freedom to work with clients I genuinely enjoyed, to solve problems that mattered, and to build something that reflected my own values and priorities. It meant never again having to watch good relationships destroyed by bad policies, or seeing clients treated as revenue sources rather than business partners. "I'm ready," I said. The next Monday morning, I walked into Richardson's office with my termination letter and supporting legal documentation. His reaction was exactly what I had expected. A mixture of surprise, anger, and dismissive arrogance. "You're making a huge mistake, Marcus," he said after reviewing the paperwork. "You think you can compete with established agencies? You think these clients are going to stay loyal to you when they realize you don't have the resources to support their needs?" I didn't argue with him. There was no point in explaining that the clients had already demonstrated their priorities by leaving Pinnacle when the personal relationships were eliminated. Richardson still didn't understand that the resources clients valued most were knowledge, attention, and genuine care for their success. "I'll need 2 weeks to transition my current responsibilities," I said. Richardson shook his head. "That won't be necessary. Security will escort you out today. We can't have someone who's planning to compete with us having access to proprietary information." This was actually perfect. I had been dreading 2 weeks of awkward conversations with colleagues and the uncomfortable process of pretending to support policies I disagreed with. Immediate termination meant I could begin my new business right away. I cleaned out my desk under the watchful eye of a security guard, said quick goodbyes to the colleagues I would genuinely miss, and walked out of the Pinnacle offices for the last time. As I drove home, I felt a mixture of nervousness and excitement that I hadn't experienced since my first day of work 7 years earlier. The real test was about to begin. Walking out of Pinnacle's building for the last time, I felt a strange sense of liberation mixed with the weight of responsibility. By noon, I was sitting in my home office, which until that morning had been our spare bedroom, staring at a blank computer screen and realizing that every decision about my professional future was now entirely my own. The first order of business was making it official. I drove to City Hall and filed the paperwork for Thompson Strategic Marketing, choosing a name that was professional but personal. The business license cost $65 and made everything suddenly real. I was no longer Marcus Thompson, Senior Account Manager. I was Marcus Thompson, Business Owner. Elena had already researched business insurance providers, and by the end of the week I had professional liability coverage, general business insurance, and a business bank account. The setup costs were manageable, especially with the severance package providing a financial cushion. The more challenging task was building the infrastructure to actually serve clients. At Pinnacle, I had relied on the company's design team, analytics platforms, social media management tools, and reporting systems. As an independent consultant, I needed to either develop these capabilities myself or partner with other providers. This challenge turned into an unexpected opportunity. Rather than trying to replicate everything Pinnacle offered, I could focus specifically on the high-value strategic consulting that clients actually wanted from me, while partnering with specialists for implementation services. Jennifer Walsh helped me understand this distinction during one of our early planning conversations. "Marcus, when I worked with you at Pinnacle, the part one valued most was our monthly strategy sessions where we talked through market trends, analyzed campaign performance, and planned future initiatives. The actual execution, creating ads, managing social media posts, updating websites, that was fine, but it wasn't why I chose your company." She continued, "What I really want is strategic guidance from someone who understands my business and my market. For the execution work, I'd be happy to work with freelancers or smaller specialists, as long as you're coordinating the overall strategy." This insight shaped my entire business model. Instead of trying to compete with full-service agencies, I would position myself as a strategic marketing consultant who worked with a network of trusted implementation partners. Clients would get better strategy from me and better execution from specialists, while I could focus on the work I was truly best at. My first official client meeting as an independent consultant was with Michael Foster at his restaurant. We sat in a corner booth during the slow period between lunch and dinner service, and I presented a comprehensive marketing strategy that would have been impossible under Pinnacle's standardized approach. "This is exactly what I was hoping for," Michael said after reviewing my proposal. "You've identified opportunities I didn't even know existed, and the implementation plan actually makes sense for my business." The strategy included partnerships with local food bloggers, a customer loyalty program tied to his point-of-sale system, and a series of cooking classes that would generate additional revenue while building stronger community connections. None of these initiatives fit into Pinnacle's standard service packages, but they were perfect for Michael's specific goals and market position. More importantly, the financial arrangement was better for both of us. Michael would pay me a monthly retainer for strategic consulting, plus project fees for specific initiatives. This generated higher revenue for me than the standardized monthly fees Pinnacle charged, while giving Michael more flexibility to adjust his marketing investments based on business conditions. By the end of my second week as an independent consultant, I had signed formal agreements with 5 clients. The combined monthly revenue was 60% of my previous salary, with significant potential for growth as their businesses expanded and as I added new clients. The work itself was more satisfying than anything I had done in years. Instead of following predetermined processes, I was solving unique problems and creating customized solutions. Each client presented different challenges that required creative thinking and strategic analysis. David Rodriguez wanted to position his auto repair shop as the premium service provider in his area, targeting customers who were willing to pay more for superior quality and convenience. This required developing messaging that emphasized expertise and reliability while creating service offerings that justified premium pricing. Sarah Chen was planning to expand her bakery into catering, which meant understanding a completely different market, with different customer needs, pricing structures, and competitive dynamics. We developed a market entry strategy that leveraged her existing reputation while building new capabilities systematically. Tom Sullivan's fitness centers needed a comprehensive marketing overhaul that would support his expansion plans, while maintaining consistent brand identity across multiple locations. This involved everything from website redesign to local community engagement strategies to corporate partnership development. The variety and complexity of these projects kept me engaged and excited about work in a way I hadn't experienced since my early days at Pinnacle. I was learning new industries, developing new skills, and seeing direct connections between my recommendations and client results. 3 weeks into my independent practice, I received an unexpected phone call from Janet in accounting at Pinnacle. We had worked together for 6 years, and she had been one of the colleagues most supportive during the transition period. "Marcus, I probably shouldn't be calling you, but I thought you should know what's happening here," she said, her voice tense with concern. "The client departures haven't stopped. We lost 3 more accounts this week, including 2 that weren't even your VIP clients. This was surprising. While I had expected my former VIP clients to leave, I hadn't anticipated that the problems would spread to other accounts." Janet explained that Richardson's standardization policies had been applied across the entire client base, not just the accounts I had managed. "The new account managers are struggling with clients who had developed relationships with their previous managers," Janet continued. "Richardson keeps saying it's a temporary adjustment period, but client satisfaction scores are getting worse, not better." She paused before sharing the most significant news. "There's talk about layoffs. Richardson brought in a consulting firm to analyze our operations, and they're recommending staff reductions to improve profitability. People are scared." The irony was devastating. Richardson had eliminated the personal relationships that drove client loyalty in order to improve efficiency, but the resulting client departures were creating financial problems that required staff cuts. His solution to the crisis was making the fundamental problem worse. 2 days later, I received a call from Lisa in project management. She was one of Pinnacle's most capable employees, with strong client relationships and excellent execution skills. Richardson's consulting firm had identified her position as redundant and offered her a severance package. "Marcus, I know you're building your own practice, and I wanted to ask if you might need help with project management or client coordination," Lisa said. "I understand if you're not ready to hire employees yet, but I thought I'd ask." This conversation sparked an idea that would transform my business model. Instead of hiring employees immediately, I could work with former Pinnacle colleagues as independent contractors on specific projects. This would give me access to talented people I trusted, while giving them income opportunities during their job searches. Lisa became my first contractor, helping coordinate implementation projects for my consulting clients. Her skills in project management and client communication were excellent, and she already understood my approach to client relationships. Within a month, I was working with 3 former Pinnacle employees as contractors: Lisa for project management, Kevin from the creative team for design work, and Amanda from analytics for reporting and data analysis. This network of trusted collaborators allowed me to offer more comprehensive services while maintaining the personal touch that clients valued. The financial results exceeded my most optimistic projections. By the end of my second month as an independent consultant, my monthly revenue was 90% of my previous salary. More importantly, the revenue was growing each month as existing clients expanded their projects and referred new prospects, but the real validation came from client feedback. Jennifer Walsh sent me an email that I printed and framed. "Marcus, working with you independently has been like getting the best parts of our previous relationship without any of the corporate bureaucracy. You're more responsive, more creative, and more focused on our success than ever before." Michael Foster was even more direct. "This is what I thought we were getting when we first hired Pinnacle 7 years ago. You've proven that the personal touch isn't just nice to have. It's essential for real results." The success of my independent practice was creating opportunities I hadn't anticipated. Other business owners were asking former clients for referrals to that marketing consultant who really cares about results. I was being invited to speak at business association meetings about relationship-based marketing strategies. Most surprisingly, I was receiving inquiries from employees at other marketing agencies who were frustrated with corporate restrictions and interested in learning about independent consulting. The problems at Pinnacle weren't unique. They reflected broader industry trends towards standardization and efficiency that were eliminating the human element from business relationships. As I approached the 3-month mark of my independent practice, I realized that Richardson's public humiliation had actually done me a tremendous favor. By forcing me out of my comfort zone, he had pushed me toward a career path that was more fulfilling, more profitable, and more aligned with my values than anything I could have achieved by staying at Pinnacle. The question now was how much bigger this opportunity could become. 6 months after walking out of Pinnacle's offices, I was reviewing quarterly reports that would have seemed impossible during those dark days under Richardson's management. Thomson's strategic marketing had grown to 12 active clients, generating monthly revenue that exceeded my previous annual salary. But the real satisfaction came from knowing that every client was thriving, not just surviving. The knock on my home office door interrupted my analysis. Elena peeked in with a knowing smile. "You have a visitor," she said. "Rebecca Martinez is here to see you." I hadn't spoken with Rebecca since our phone conversation months earlier, though I knew she had been following my progress through mutual connections in the Chicago business community. Her visit was unexpected but welcome. "Congratulations, Marcus," Rebecca said as we settled in my office. "I've been hearing remarkable things about what you've built here. Jennifer Walsh told me you've helped her expand into 3 new market segments. Michael Foster said his revenue is up 40% since he started working with you." She looked around the office, taking in the client success stories displayed on the walls, the strategic planning boards covered with project timelines, and the energy of a business that was growing organically through results rather than aggressive sales tactics. "There's something I need to tell you," Rebecca continued. "Summit Strategic Group has approached me about consulting on their operations. Apparently their standardization strategy isn't working as well as they expected." The irony was rich. The company that had dismissed relationship-based marketing as inefficient was now seeking advice from the person who had built Pinnacle's success on exactly those principles. They've lost 43 clients across their portfolio since implementing their optimization strategies, Rebecca explained. The financial impact has been severe enough that their parent company is demanding immediate corrective action. She pulled out her phone and showed me a news article from Chicago Business Journal. The headline read, "Summit Strategic Group announces management changes following client losses." Richardson had been removed as CEO and reassigned to special projects. The article cited philosophical differences about client service strategies as the reason for his demotion. "The new management team wants to restore the personal touch that made their acquired agencies successful," Rebecca said. "They've asked me to help them identify what went wrong and how to fix it." We talked for over an hour about the fundamental differences between efficiency-focused and relationship-focused business models. Rebecca was developing a comprehensive analysis of why Summit's approach had failed, and she wanted to include my experience as a case study. Your success as an independent consultant proves that clients value personal relationships over corporate efficiency, she said. You've grown faster in 6 months than most agencies grow in 2 years, specifically because you've given clients what they actually want. After Rebecca left, I reflected on how dramatically my professional life had changed. The humiliation Richardson had inflicted in that boardroom had forced me to rediscover what I was truly capable of accomplishing. His dismissal of my relationship-building approach had motivated me to prove its value in the marketplace. That evening, my phone rang with a call that brought the story full circle. It was Patricia Hoffman, the attorney who had helped me navigate the legal aspects of leaving Pinnacle. "Marcus, I have an interesting proposition for you," she began. "Summit Strategic Group has reached out about potentially acquiring your consulting practice. They're offering a substantial premium for what they're calling, quote, proven relationship-based methodologies." The offer was financially attractive, enough to set Elena and me up comfortably for life, but it also represented everything I had fought against when I left Pinnacle. Summit wanted to buy my business not to preserve what made it successful, but to systematize and scale it across their portfolio. They want to package your approach into a training program for their account managers, Patricia explained. They see your client retention rates and growth metrics as proof that relationship-based marketing can be standardized and replicated. This was exactly the misunderstanding that had created the problems at Pinnacle in the first place. Summit still believed that business relationships could be reduced to processes and protocols, that genuine personal connections could be manufactured through corporate training programs. I declined their offer without hesitation. The value of what I had built wasn't in the methodologies or systems. It was in the authentic relationships with specific clients who trusted me as an individual, not as a representative of a larger organization. 3 months later, I received a call that provided the perfect punctuation to this story. Tom Sullivan, whose fitness centers had become one of my most successful client partnerships, had exciting news. "Marcus, I just closed on the acquisition of 2 more fitness centers," he said. "This makes 5 locations total, and I'm projecting revenue growth of 60% next year. None of this would have been possible without the marketing strategies you've developed for us." Tom's success illustrated everything that had motivated me to leave Pinnacle and start my own practice. He hadn't just hired me to execute predetermined marketing tactics. He had trusted me to understand his business deeply enough to identify opportunities he hadn't seen himself. The relationship we had built allowed for the kind of strategic thinking and creative problem-solving that corporate standardization eliminated. When Tom faced unexpected challenges, we adapted quickly. When new opportunities emerged, we capitalized immediately. As I hung up the phone, I thought about Richardson's prediction that my former clients would abandon me once they realized I didn't have corporate resources to support their needs. He had fundamentally misunderstood what resources clients actually valued. Clappily, they didn't need the latest marketing automation platforms or standardized reporting dashboards. They needed someone who understood their businesses, cared about their success, and had the flexibility to adapt strategies based on real-world results. A year after leaving Pinnacle, Thomson Strategic Marketing had grown to 18 clients across 6 different industries. The business was profitable, sustainable, and personally fulfilling in ways that corporate employment had never been. More importantly, every client was achieving measurable improvements in their marketing effectiveness. Jennifer Walsh had expanded into corporate catering and doubled her revenue. Michael Foster had opened his 2nd restaurant location ahead of schedule. David Rodriguez had successfully positioned his auto repair business as the premium service provider in his market. The personal relationships that Richardson had dismissed as inefficient dependencies had become the foundation for a thriving business built on mutual trust and shared success. Sometimes I wondered what would have happened if Richardson had never called me useless in that boardroom, if Summit had chosen to preserve Pinnacle's relationship-focused culture, instead of replacing it with corporate standardization. I probably would have remained a loyal employee, content with steady advancement within someone else's organization. I might never have discovered the entrepreneurial skills and strategic thinking capabilities that independent consulting had revealed. Richardson's humiliation had been intended to diminish me, but it had actually liberated me to become everything I was capable of being. His dismissal of my approach had motivated me to prove its value in the most compelling way possible, by building something better than what he had destroyed. Today, when young professionals ask me about career advice, I tell them that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you professionally can become the catalyst for the best thing that ever happens to you. The key is recognizing when apparent failure is actually an opportunity for transformation. Bradley Richardson had called me useless in public, not knowing that I held the relationships that represented 70% of our client network's value. His ignorance about what truly drove business success had cost him his position and damaged his company. But it had given me the chance to build something extraordinary. A business based on the simple principle that personal relationships and genuine care for client success will always triumph over corporate efficiency and standardized processes. The man who called me useless had accidentally set me free to prove just how valuable I really was. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.